When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back. This is the HTML All the Things podcast. I don't have a title for this episode because this is a blind episode. If you haven't been here before for a blind episode, we kind of do them occasionally. It's when I write up a set of show notes, and Mike has not seen them. He hasn't heard of the topic. I mean, I'm sure he'll hear the topic now, but he's being basically revealed the topic live as of recording, and then I kind of go through a bunch of different scenarios. Now, normally in these episodes, we will do sort of, at least on my side, I have a set of notes where it's just a couple bullet points, like, ask Mike this, ask Mike that, ask some questions. This week, we're going to do some customer situations, some customer scenarios. So I have 3 different customer scenarios, and I basically want to talk about this. So it's going to be from the perspective of, because Mike and I do run our own web dev agency. So we, as a web dev agency, receive these calls for help, these phone calls, these scenarios, and how we would deal with them appropriately. So let's kick it off. This is going to be SEO focused, actually, I would like to say as well. Mostly SEO focused, but also it's going to lean into like the sort of, hey, as a person that works with small to medium businesses, you're going to be a solutions architect. And we'll kind of dive into that as we go in. And this episode will have a title by the time you listen to this anyway, so that's fine. Unless I just literally uploaded it as untitled. But anyway, this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, share this with your friends. And we also have a up to 20% off Scrimba affiliate link if you want to learn how to code with their interactive media player code editor. Go check it out. Link will be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. So without further ado, we have 3 different scenarios. And like I said, in the past, I've just had a few bullet points. I have a full page of notes here on like these different scenarios. So I would say that they grow in complexity and they grow in not necessarily annoyance, but it goes from like belligerent clients through like, people that are really confused and all. It kind of just touches on all different things. So let's jump into the first one here. And this one's really simple. That's why I wanted to say that. I didn't want you to think like, oh, all these scenarios are going to be so easy. And that's not the case. So the first scenario is a small accountant office. So a client, which is the small accountant office, calls your agency and asks for SEO assistance. They have a Facebook page for their small business that mostly serves local customers. So again, this place only serves or mostly serves local customers to them. And they're receiving complaints from their clients that their business is too difficult to find online when people want to reach out, or when people are trying to get to their office to submit their taxes, have conversations in person, things like that. It's too difficult to navigate to their storefront. So what is the solution that you would kind of think up off the top of your head, Mike?
Yeah, Google My Business card. Like just immediately would go in, check their Google My Business, get their login details. If they don't have one set up, set one up. If they have one set up incorrectly, fix it. That would be the first thing that would have the highest impact for them. Other than that, just making sure that their basic website has their contact details prominently displayed. A lot of times when someone has issues finding a place, it means that the website maybe is not a standard website, has some weird obfuscated way of doing contact us or about us, where it's not easy to find your information. For small local businesses, the real main reasons that customers will go on someone's website are check pricing, find out where they are, and contact them. Those are really the only 2. Everything else about the website should be very SEO targeted so that it pops up first in that local area. But yeah, I think that would be an easy one to fix with Google Business card.
And the reason why I did want to say again that the scenarios do vary in complexity is because this is kind of a very low hanging fruit. This is absolutely something, like Mike said, where it's largely solved by Google My Business. And it highlights the importance of Google My Business. And we've mentioned this in the show before, but we've literally revolutionized one of the local businesses out here's like customer base, like literally revolutionized. It's a solo business. It's a person that was getting, I can't remember exact numbers now, but they was getting, it's like 20 calls a month. Now it's like 40 to 98 calls because it's a seasonal business per month. People are navigating to their place. And also there is something else I want to point out here too, is having consistent information across their website and having consistent information across their website and the Google My Business card. Like if you have, kind of like if you're in like a plaza, let's say, of multiple businesses, you want to make sure that if your Google My Business card says it's like, it's on this road and I'm unit 113, you want to make sure that that unit 113 and that road is consistent on your contact us page, because chances are you'll have that on your website. And also you want to ensure that your point, meaning your map point, is at the right place. So sometimes on Google Maps, especially when it's just sort of a business plaza, let's say it's a very large plaza, Google Maps may just say, hey, it's, kind of here, and it'll just kind of point to the parking lot, and it's getting people to the right place, and likely your sign will draw them in. But you are able to request that your map point is moved. And so what you really want to do is move that map point, again, especially if it's a large, sort of industrial plaza or commercial plaza, you want to move that map point directly to where your business is. Because, I've written about this in the past, the UX newcomer effect, which is someone showing up and going like, okay, I've navigated here for the very first time. Where is this person? Like, where is this place? And, it's easy enough to find things via signs, but it would be nice to just immediately recognize on the GPS, oh, it's in the corner of the building. You look, perfect, there's a parking spot there. Like, it's just those little conveniences that are going to help your business, kind of unspoken little conveniences that are really going to help. Another thing I do want to say too is, I did mention SEO assistance specifically because people are going to say like, oh, I need help, SEO assistance. It's true that this is kind of an SEO job, but this isn't an SEO job in the fact that you're not going in and, finding all the top keywords and trying to figure all that stuff out. That's not what we're doing here. This is something different, right? This is something where what you're really doing is you are doing SEO in the context of a local business. So people in the town, like usually these are like, small towns or smaller communities generally, usually they already know about this accountant office. And what they're doing is they're just quickly being like, oh, I need to nav there, or, oh, I need to call my accountant really quick. I have a question. They want to quickly Google it and hit the call button in the Google My Business card. And if they need any other details, they may go to the website. So you're not really doing like hey, let's write, 2,000 guides on accounting in Canada or accounting in the United States, and then try to hit all these keywords and try to do that. Like, that's not what this person's doing. If they're happy with, continuing to serve local customers, their SEO assistance really needs to be in that context of the local area.
Yeah, I think I just want to put the nail in the head there because it's super important. I think a lot of web services are always there to upsell and try to charge more than what's required. I shouldn't say a lot, but like the instinct for any salesperson is to try to get as much money as they possibly can. And the instinct for any web developer that's starting out is probably like, I want to do the most amount that I possibly can to show my skills off and do what I can. Like, a lot of people will come to the situation and be like, you need a full, website revamp, you need SEO help, let's get some blogs going, like the whole package, and try to sell them on like a $5,000 to $10,000 package. When in reality, like Matt mentioned, a really focused, hey, let's do this Google My Business card. And if you're a new web development shop or a web agency that's trying to start out locally, this might be something where you go up to them and do something for very low cost or even free as a first step, and try not upsell them to the point where they're just like extraordinarily happy with your service. And they're the ones that are going to be evangelizing for you moving forward because you didn't try to upsell them. You improved everything that they asked for. You did it really quickly, right? And you were efficient. And now their business has gone up 10x, 20x. who do you think they're going to suggest when their friend that owns the attorney shop down the street or the sub shop next to them, who are they going to recommend as a web agency, if not you, when you've provided such a good service? So these are the kinds of things you can really, that make you stand out initially, where you would take on, very cheap, maybe $50, $100, or free again, and provide excellent service because you know exactly the hyper-focused thing that they need, which is the Google My Business card, and that's really it.
The other thing too is this isn't really SEO, but it is beneficial in the same way of SEO is, again, we're talking about a local business. And this is something I've literally done for a small accountant office is they were, kind of struggling with, oh man, like our clients are not kind of getting, like they need a variety of different PDFs. I don't even know what you'd call them, financial document things where it's like, hey, like, in Canada, you need this, this, and this, this, and this for the CRA, which is the Canadian IRS. You need these documents and you need to fill them in. And so it's like, hey, why not serve those on the website? Why not have those PDFs there so that when you're in the meeting, like let's say it's an in-person meeting or on the phone with the accountant, they can be like, hey man, go grab your, whatever form, your, tax form 1. You go grab tax form 1. You can find it at, my website /tax forms or /documents or whatever. They actually requested that of me. I did it. And like, it's a really good idea because what you're doing then is like their website is not this like SEO machine that's going to the international audience, but it is being used to help their experience. Like at the end of the day here, what you're trying to do is you're trying to help their experience, help their local presence. And like Mike said, you're only going to help your own local presence too. Like that accountant may call their friend down the road and be like, oh, like, I'm in a small town and the jewelry store down the road, they have problems where people keep accidentally going to the driving school down the road. And, their little GPS point on Google Maps is slightly incorrect. How can we fix this? And so like, then you're getting a second job from that. So at the end of the day here, again, you are a solutions architect. And this is going to be a common theme throughout this episode is you are going to be a solutions architect and you're going to have to kind of think this through and just really kind of almost put yourself in the customer's shoes, like their customer's shoes as an accountant's client and think, man, it would be nice to have a tax form just online so I could just do this in the evening without calling. It would be nice to be told exactly where to go, things like that. We have scenario number 2. So this is going to be more complex because it's more frustrating. So here we go. Scenario number 2 is number 1 Google. You probably know what's coming here. A belligerent client calls your agency and says that he needs to be number 1 Google. We hear this a lot on phone calls. Upon prying, meaning you're prying, to find out details about his business, you're getting barely anything back. You're getting sketchy details at best from the client. They're kind of being very like, yeah. Like, you don't need to know all this. I just want to be number 1 Google. How do I get to number 1 Google? The client will not tell you these details. He just wants you to execute his demands. And all he wants is to get to number 1 in Google. So this client has a small budget, of course. This happens so often. This client has a small budget and refuses to be involved with the process. So in other words, you can't be like, yeah, like I know details are sketchy today, but I'm going to reach out later. You can't even do that. So a summary of this case could be just make it happen. So Mike, we've dealt with this so many times, right? Get me to number 1 Google. I have a small budget. Just do it. Just figure it out. That's your job. You're a cog in my machine and I'm the one that designed the machine, even though I didn't design the cog or understand what part I need. Go. Just do it for me and like shut up, kind of almost. How do you deal with, well, I guess clients like this, but also the scenario around it?
Yeah, this is a very common one, and it's a difficult one because you need to be customer first and you need to be understanding of a customer. So like, you can't just flat out be like, no, it's impossible. You can't be super blunt with a customer because that might come to bite you in the ass. They might give you a bad review. They might tell, their friends not to use you, whatever. Like, you can't be that blunt, but you also can't take on impossible tasks for little pay. So you need to be that kind of salesy, nice rejection approach here in this situation. You need to explain as much as best you can. Hey, with the data you've provided, I get your frustration. I understand you want to be number 1. I fully understand that. I think it's a very good idea to try to aim there, right? Like that's how I would frame it. You need to get as high as you can in the Google search. That's going to help your business. You are on the right track. Let's take a look at your competition. Let's take a look at where you're at right now. Let's take a look at your competitors. Are your competitors large paid players, right? Are they paying for Google Ads? Are they paying a lot of money for Google Ads? And in that case, let's talk about, hey, your budget is this. Your competitors, they're probably somewhere in like, the 10x, 20x, 30x budgets just for the paid ads, right? So that's number one. That's the number one hurdle you're going to have to go over. You need to get on top of them. You need to pay more than them. That's just straight out economics. We can get you somewhere, but we can't get you there without those paid ads. So let's, set those expectations first. Next expectation is like the organic search results, right? The ones that aren't paid. Let's take a look. How long have these guys been in here? Let's take a look at their performance scores. Let's take a look at their SEO scores. Okay, here's the reality. Your situation, you're way below them in every single score and metric. To get above them, you would need this amount of work. So you would need blog posts. You would need to just be longer in the business. You would need referrals. You need backlinks. Explain to them from a very high level what they need, and then be like, okay, the reality is to get there, we need to hire this. We need to build this. We need to do this, right? All of that can be in the realm of, 10,000, 15,000, whatever the situation is, whatever money is. When you try to break it down with them, not by rejecting them, but explaining to them what it takes to get there from your personal and professional experience, a lot of times customers will start to realize that what they're asking for is impossible in the budget that they're giving, and start to either one of two things: open their pocketbook and be like, okay, you seem to know what you're doing. This was a test, quote unquote, that you passed. I'm going to open my pocketbook, give you what you need. Let's get it done. Or the more likely scenario in this situation is they'll be like, oh, okay, what can we do with the minimal amount of budget? Like, where can I get there? Where can I get to with my budget, right? So they're going to start to temper their expectations, and they're going to start to approach you from your end and be like, okay, well, I've laid out all these buckets. Your budget gives you one of these buckets. Where's that going to get you? Never be deterministic. Like, never tell them it's going to guarantee you, 5 steps up. Just tell them, hey, it's a step in the right direction. It's going to make you better. It's going to make you easier to find, et cetera, et cetera. Give them very realistic expectations that you can hit. And that's kind of the initial negotiating power there. Now, again, a lot of times learning how to say no in an elegant and nice way is a very, very important skill you're going to have to learn, because of the fact that it's a very gentle relationship between a client and like, you have to treat them as a client even though they're not paying you yet, because you don't know the ramifications of rupturing that relationship. Sometimes they can be angry and forceful with you, those situations. But you don't be angry and forceful back. You just be very blunt and be like, okay, I think it's better we move our separate ways. If you ever need anything else, don't hesitate to email me, but just know that this relationship, just know that I will be expecting a little bit more professional demeanor, like whatever. Just you can be very professionally blunt with them, but those are the extreme situations when they're actually like aggressive towards you. Most of the time, it's going to be either passively aggressive aggression towards you or metered expectations towards you. Those are the kind of situations you have to do diplomatically and let them down easy, in the sense of like, hey, here's the amount of money you need to spend to get there. Price them out of their own idea, essentially. I think Matt and I have started to use that approach a lot. There's realistic pricing. We're not going to give them any deals just to get in the door with them, because we know that they're stingy on pricing right off the get-go. We're not doing any exposure deals, like, do this for the exposure. That's not a thing. Explain that all very calmly, very casually, not casually, but very professionally and firmly as well.
Well, I think in this particular scenario, I have a couple of follow-up questions. So the one would be, like, I like your approach. However, if this person, truly is belligerent and is being ignorant to you to the point where they don't want to listen, I guess there's 2 parts to this question. So, what is the point in which you pull the plug, where you just say, hey man, like, I don't think we're going to be able to do that? And B, what point do you bring it to email? And what I mean by that is, you're on the phone. This is sort of like a cold call from them. they're, again, being really kind of ignorant, kind of pushing you off the phone. They're like, I got work to do kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, dude, but like, so will we if you want this. And there's a lot to be done, right? To be blunt, it obviously would phrase it like that, but that's what's going to have to happen. There's going to have to be a lot of work done. And so the question then remains, is this a case that you would say, okay, oh yeah, like I'll see what I can do and then I'll bring it to email and I'll send you what you just said, Mike? Because like what you said, it's like rather long form. If they're cutting you off, verbally, maybe you'll get through to them email, and maybe chances are they'll even just refuse you. But then when we say that, it's like, well, hang on, that might be just a waste of time. Would it make sense to drop this person? Like, this person's being ignorant, they're being belligerent, they have unrealistic expectations, and they're not very receptive rather to your like realist, like the situation you laid out, where you laid all out for them and at a high level, is very like realist. It's like, hey, this is what it's going to require to even attempt this. I understand you're mad and you want this to go as quickly as possible. That's great. It doesn't change the system in which we have online. Is if it was easy to get to #1 Google, everyone would just do it. So what's your thoughts on that? Like, kind of like when the situation gets like, oh, we have to get pushed off the call, or maybe we're just going to push off the whole thing and be like, hey man, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I think my approach was actually like not just a call. It was probably going to be more of like a initial, hey, we're going to look into it situation, get off the call, and then send a fairly canned response back in a day or two with all the information that I said. So overall, I think that will be a really good vetting process anyway. If a lot of people just won't respond to that email, and then you'll know that they weren't too serious, but you didn't rupture any relationships. Great. So that's a good way to do it. Like, realistically being able to tell them all that in the first initial call is very unlikely, because you need to know what they're asking for, right? Like, even if their budget's too small, the only thing you can do if you're already established in the industry and to not quote unquote waste your time, right? Because you have to be careful here. You don't want to tell that to the person, like, I don't want to waste my time. That's a really aggressive statement. But the reality is that if someone is being like, I only have $250 to do this, and your minimum budget is, $5,000 to $10,000 for any work that you do, then on the initial introductory call, it's okay to allude to that. Be like, hey, currently we're only taking on 5 to 10, like at a minimum of $5,000 retainer for any sort of work we do. We just have a lot of client work in the back burner. We can give you a call back when we have space for lower budget projects, but right now we're just not we just don't have the capacity to do that. So you can be, again, diplomatically blunt with the situation in the intro call, so as to not, waste a couple of days of your time building out a quote or a statement that is more informational, right? But if the situation is like you're early on in the career and you're trying to get clients and they had not like a low budget, but like a reasonably low budget, and you want that client, you want them to open up their pocketbook because you think you can actually do better for them. And that's a really important thing with sales, right? Like, if you're a technical salesperson and you understand the process, and you look at a client and you're like, oh, I could double their business, right? Like, you could see that sometimes, like they have a shitty website, they have a shitty online presence, they have a good product. That's a situation where you're like, I could double your business. In that situation, that's where your salesman hat turns on, and you try to work a deal with them, right? Like, you don't have to stick to the same exact script every time. If you see that and you're confident in your abilities, work out a payment plan option. Work out hey, if we increase your business by 2x, you pay us this much. We'll check in with you. You provide us some sort of way to access your data. Done. Like, your Google Analytics, for instance. If we increase your Google, the amount of traffic on your site, we get X amount of money. So you can play those kinds of games. It's a rare situation. I'm just giving you another tool in your toolbox, but there's different ways to handle these kinds of clients. And if they're being belligerent, like, I think another question you asked is, where do you draw the line? I don't deal with disrespect very well, like maybe to a fault, personally. I don't get belligerent back. I just get very blunt, and I get extremely like respectful back, almost like rudely respectful maybe. where I just say, hey, I understand you're frustrated. I don't think this relationship's going to work. If they're disrespecting me, that's the kind of approach I take as quickly as possible. I can't work with people in that situation. Like, I'm not your typical salesman that will sit there and take, be berated for that extra 5% commission. I can't do that. I'm not a salesman. I'm a technical person, but that's where I draw the line. It's like disrespect, actual like direct disrespect. I can't do it.
I like that you kind of turned it into like a business deal. Like I feel as though, and we do this a lot, and we've just recently kind of stopped doing this, which sounds silly, but it's easy as an entrepreneur to act like an employee, where it's like, well, I guess I'm handed this deal. This guy's calling me, and he's belligerent, and he's kind of, I guess I better just sort of figure out how to do what he asks. And I know that some entrepreneurs say that and they go like, whatever the client asks, we just do. But you're right. Like if they have a bad website and you know that you can help them increase their sales, double their sales, whatever it is, I mean, that's a pretty good sales pitch. And as an entrepreneur, for the good of your business, you're almost obligated sometimes to bring that stuff up, where you can say, hey man, like I don't know about number one Google, but are you ultimately trying to raise your sales? Because I see some really big issues. And I think if we fix these issues, that you're going to show up in more results. Or maybe like for some reason you only take Visa and you don't take MasterCard. Hey man, like let's take a look at that. Let's maybe start accepting more credit cards. Let's accept Amex, or let's accept, MasterCard as well. Let's do this and that. I like that that was something that you brought up, because it's something that we've started doing. We very much, or at least myself, like there was a lot of times where I just kind of act like an employee in my own business, where I'm just sort of like giving a hand and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to like quickly do this. But then I kind of think about it and I'm like, hey, this is my business, right? Like if this is something that I, can't do, don't want to do, and there has to be good reason to do this. Obviously, I'm not going to excuse myself from every inconvenience. But if there's good reason not to do something, like if it's going to harm the customer's site for the sake of the customer, you have to question whether that's worth it, whether that makes sense. And, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And so I think that that's a good point to bring up, is you're still running a business. Like you, even if the person is belligerent and kind of like, kind of saying a wall of text, if you will, into your ear, you are still obligated for the good of your business to be a salesperson and say, hey man, like I can turn this around and I can give you something better or different and it will help you. Now, there's obviously a limit to that, as you mentioned, with the, if someone starts disrespecting, if someone's just being a jerk, if someone's being like totally inappropriate or something like that. I like how you get overly respectful. My way of handling that is I stop talking. I let them kind of like burn themselves out, because usually they're on like a rant against me. And then I say to them, I go, okay, so what are we doing? And it becomes like, oh, I don't know. Or I have a lot of experience with talking with people in a consulting call, and I'll be like, hey, I think that we should move your email server, just for the sake of simplicity. I think we should move your email server. And they'll be like, no, that's stupid, because moving email servers is bad for SEO and blah, 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 blah. And like whatever they say is just like blatantly wrong. And you try to correct them and say, hey man, like I've never heard of that. I don't think that's right. And they're just getting belligerent, and then they start getting like rude or like whatever. I just stop talking. They burn themselves out. And then they'll be like, hello. And I'll be like, hey. And they're like, well, like, what's your response to that? I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm like, what do you think we should do then? And they'll be like, well, I don't think we should move the email server. I'm like, okay, so we'll leave it the same, and then there'll be no changes then. Like I just get like really kind of like into their own comments. Because usually when someone's being belligerent about like a technical project or being rude about a technical project, they're usually trying to be a know-it-all. And so it's just sort of like, okay, like I'll do whatever you ask. I want it in writing, or at least verbally confirm that this is like a decision that is bad. Like this is, bad SEO or bad whatever. And if it's them walking off a cliff, quote unquote, like if they're hypothetically or figuratively walking off a cliff, as in they're about to do something illegal or something, blatantly wrong or something, I'm going to be like, hey man, I'm not going to get involved in that. Like, I think that you need to talk to an accountant. I don't think that's the right, tax practice. I don't think that, I think that you're plagiarizing. I don't want to touch that. And then they just walk away at some of those points. So you have to use your own discretion a lot. Like obviously Mike has his strategy. I mentioned my strategy is kind of the silent treatment a little bit with a bit of a rebuttal. But you do have to, judge with your own discretion as to when you're just like, I'm not going to touch this because I do not want to be, held responsible for somebody going in here and making $2 million and not paying any tax. It's like, I'm not going to touch this. I'm backing away. No way. No, sir. That ain't up to me. Please call a registered accountant or someone who is a professional because I ain't touching that. And this is the final, but a large scenario. This is like a whole pretty much half a page. So I'm going to do a bit of reading here and then we'll go into it. This is very solutions architect. So scenario 3 is a fixer-upper. So a client calls your agency as a call for help. They run a local construction office that sometimes has clients show up in person to share construction plans and organize large projects. They also field a lot of phone calls from prospective leads, but some customers are complaining that their calls don't seem to be going through, and that it's likely because there are multiple phone numbers listed for the same purpose. So there's something missing there. Someone's calling a number, maybe that line's been disconnected, maybe the phone number's changed. Now, this is a local construction office, they're pretty busy, and they've attempted to get their online presence fully set up in the past. And this has resulted in a Google My Business card being set up. However, some information is missing, some information is inaccurate. They have a WordPress site, but unfortunately it has bad performance. And they have social media profiles, but the social media profiles look a little unprofessional. They're largely incomplete. Maybe there's like missing bios, maybe some inconsistent posting types, maybe inconsistent posting schedule. Maybe that's part of it. And then also they have a blog section on their website, but it's been abandoned. And they only have the original Hello World sample post in that blog. Now, this is what they've told you, but you decide to do some prying. And upon your investigation yourself, you find that they're putting in SEO titles and SEO descriptions that are way too long. And when I say that, I mean like meta descriptions, the things that are fed to Google for SEO. You also find that any pages that are long form with a lot of text and multiple headings, the headings themselves are not in proper order, H1 through H6. They're all over the place. And you also find that on top of the Google My Business card being a bit messy, the information on the Contact Us page is inconsistent with the information found on the Google My Business card. And you suspect that this is one of the reasons why people are maybe getting the wrong phone number, because maybe they're calling a phone number from here and it's moved, it's a different number now, whatever. So at the end of the day, this is just sort of a big ol' SEO and technical SEO. So SEO presence, I guess you could say, SEO marketing, whatever you want to say. And then also technical SEO mess. So what is your plan of attack? How do you help this person?
Yeah, great one. So for this one, I would do it in 2 phases. I would pitch them on an SEO consulting audit. That'd be the first thing. And that would, the deliverables on that would be a full report on everything that's wrong with their current strategy, right? So it would go through their Google My Business, go through their website, go through their blog, everything. And then it would have a section after all the wrong things, those are the things that need to be fixed. It would have a recommendation section where you would go through and give them, recommendations on, hey, we need to have better, more consistent blog posts if you want to get into the foyer of SEO, right? Into a consistent metric on showing up on Google at a certain point and trying to target the keywords that you need to target to bring in the clients that you need to buy your stuff. So I would have a whole recommendation section where I would lay out what needs to be done to essentially get the most out of the business from a marketing SEO perspective, right? So this would be one whole project separate from the second one, which would be the execution part, right? So the second one is having a back and forth with the client after they receive the report and laying out a plan that takes in a lot of the recommendation section that you have, bringing in a team and starting to execute on that process. And the reason that I like to split this up is because it allows them to kind of establish that relationship with you without having to spend exorbitant amounts of money. And that the audit's not going to be super cheap, but it's not going to be like the implementation costs. And you're also, again, proving your worth in a report perspective, in a consulting perspective. And this kind of shows a more professional foot forward rather than jumping in and like, oh, I need to fix all this. I need to fix all this. You're you're showing them that, hey, we need to take some time. We need to figure out what's wrong. And a lot of times that delay when you're trying to sell something actually works in your favor of like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. Like they've dealt with this before. They know that they have to take the time to make sure that it's the right approach. So it might not work. Like they might be like, oh, we need this fixed ASAP. That might be okay. That might be the response that you get back. And then you can be like, okay, well, we still have to figure out what to fix. Right. So like, I understand like these high level things. I get it. Like they're wrong, but we need to go in and make sure, like Matt said, do the due diligence. That's going to still take us a little bit of time. We can work out a thing that combines some high level fixes into a report. How about that? So again, playing the business angle. And then again, back to the whole, hey, you're losing money approach. You're losing money with this. Let's make sure that we get this right. And let's make sure that we can, increase your sales. Always come back to that.
I like that your scenario is very like, you're very much like a solutions architect here, right? Because like you need to do the phases, like you said, like this is a loaded question. I mean, just the scenario itself took about half a page here. And it makes a lot of sense to like kind of like walk people through like, hey, we'll do the audit. We'll figure out what the heck we need to do, what the heck we need to fix and go through. And then there's also like, I want to say from a more direct perspective, just for in our brains as the technicians involved, there is like this sort of like, there's the technical SEO angle. And then there's also like not technical, but the the marketing SEO angle, but there's ways to do it with UX a little bit. So like one kind of key thing that I zoom in on right away is obviously like we need to make sure all our information is correct and it's consistent, things like that. But there's some things that are being done incorrectly that could be kind of solved via a CMS. So going into your WordPress and forcing people to have an SEO title, like making it a required field. You must type in an SEO title. You must type in an SEO description. You must type them in within these character restraints. Choose a character restraint. I want to have a maximum of 60 characters for an SEO title, for example. Force the people to go within these parameters. It's going to be uncomfortable for them in the beginning, but this is forcing them to not make a mistake at the end of the day. You don't want them to get themselves back into a mess. Having proper training is key. Having proper training of like, hey man, like you got to do H1 through H6. You got to make sure this is correct. And you can go in and fix the pages that are there, but it'd be good to either have a video or a sit down with the client to show them, yo man, like this is incorrect. Like you got to make sure that H1 through H6 is here. It's consistent. It's good for accessibility. It's good for SEO. It's very like communicative really to bots, to robots. How I describe it to people is I always say that you're explaining what a page is to someone who is simple in terms of like, they only have a few parameters. Like you're literally talking to a robot and the robot only has a very simple amount of like information in their head. So you can still talk to them like a person, but it's a robot. They only have a simple architecture. And so if you're like, well, this page is kind of about construction, but it's a little bit about mining, but it's actually like kind of like that show Yukon Gold. It's like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, what do you mean? It's like, no. What you're trying to say is that you rent excavators. Your excavators are reliable and they've been featured on the show Yukon Gold, for example. That is a more simple way to go through it. You want to talk to this person like they only have a simple brain, right? It's a robot. It's not a person. So that's how you need to explain it. And I also tell them that as time goes on, as time, moves on and I mean Google and the other search engines get better and better at AI and all the rest of it. That person, which is not a real person, that robot gets more advanced and more advanced. So having, things be super clear and then also detailed, like nice and detailed, have those really clear headings, have those really clear descriptions and SEO titles, but then have a really nice, intricate, nice paragraphs where things are well explained, but they're still clear, is just going to play on the bot's advancement over time. Now, yes, SEO strategies need to change, but just having something real nice that a human who, has a complex brain can read and understand and enjoy reading, and then something that's still simple and to the point where that robot who has a simple brain just goes like, what is this? You also have to imagine that this quote unquote person, this robot that you're talking to, is just glancing at it. They're glancing at like, a million pages a day, or, probably way more. And they don't have time to be like, well, let's get to the bottom of this whole Yukon Gold thing. It's like, what? Like, that's not what this thing's going to do. It's going to be like, don't know what that is. Maybe it's a TV show. Moving on. Right? It's there for a second. It's there to get the point. It's there to get the gist. And then it is gone. This is also a thing too that I would like to say is that what you should be doing is you should get all of their information to be consistent, of course. So like the Google My Business card should reflect what's on the contact us page and all that. With this particular scenario, you may want to consider a third-party software. Mike and I have never had to actually do this for anybody, because most of the time they just won't do it. But we do work with clients that will use like a CRM or other advanced software that will make sure all of this stuff is consistent. It'll plug into things like Google My Business. It'll plug into their website. It'll plug into this, that, and the other thing. And so this is this is still a local construction office. You likely don't need to go to that point. But I know that some of you listening are likely thinking, well, like, oh, I just have a software that does all this. Yes, but it's likely super expensive because it has 975,000 features and they're going to use like 100 of them. So like, why give them that? However, you could start potentially looking at that if like they're moving a lot, if their numbers are changing a lot, if they need to change or add new offices that they're franchising out or expanding and things like that. Like there may come a point when it's like, hey, look at the reason why this became a mess in the first place. Is this a mess because your business is not, I don't want to say your business is a mess, but is this a mess because you're all over the place? Like you just have a lot going on and you have a lot of offices and you're constantly expanding and, you used to call the owner, but then he got rid of his cell phone and now you call like a call line and, now we don't have that because it wasn't enough customers to call the call line. So now you just call the marketing department and they have like this list of, this is what happens in businesses. And so you as a solutions architect, yes, you have like that technical and UX like ability to go in and set those hard limits on character counts and things. But you really do need to, again, to look at on both sides, where in one of the previous scenarios I mentioned, you have to like put yourself in the shoes of the client for your client. Like you're the client of that accountant office in the first scenario. In this case, you're the client of the construction office. And you want to, call, you want to show up, you want to know how to submit plans if there's a electronic way to submit. You want to make sure that things are clear if in like laid out on the site where it says like, please do not, submit construction plans. Please bring the physical blueprints to our office. And here's where our office is. Make sure those things make sense. But then also, because this is now a complex scenario where there's it's like a spaghetti of wires, what you want to do is you want to put yourself in your client's shoes and you want to say, okay, we're opening up a second office. This should not be a 2-day process on our website to add a second office page. This should be quick. Oh, don't worry guys, I made a quick little template. You literally say plus new office, boom, fill in the blank. Here's my address. Here's this, here's that, here's this, here's that. Boom, publish it. New page has been generated from the information I put in. And I made those fields as error mitigating as possible. They had character restrictions. They had requirements restrictions. They had restrictions on the page. So like for the WordPress bad performance, maybe they're uploading images that are way too big. Put in some file limits. Force them to use WebP or something like that. Force them to use not PNGs. Whatever. Force them to have the proper resolution, maybe. Things along those lines. Like make it so that the website will refuse incorrect things. And they may complain in the beginning, but then they'll realize like, well, this thing isn't going to upload unless it's 1200 by 600. So I better resize it. And that's, from a 4K image, that's going to save, just the resizing is going to save possibly several megabytes of space. So like what I'm kind of saying is like less put together than Mike said. Like Mike had a kind of a clear plan. Mine's kind of all over the place, but I will go in and do that audit and I will kind of come up with a plan, but the plan is going to look a little bit like spaghetti because what they have is spaghetti. And what you want to do is you want to basically like say like, okay, let's get this all organized. Let's get on one page, because if my plan, is organized, but is all over the place, let's make sure that when you go to edit your site, you don't come into this scenario again and your current customers are like, oh, thank God, like I was being directed to the next town, and this friggin' guy moved his construction office, and I didn't know, right? Like, you don't like, is that a huge problem? Not necessarily, but it kind of is. You don't want to have those problems, and you don't want to. And if those problems arise, you don't want to have them call you. Put it in the CMS. Oh, like, here, put in your new office address, and the map will update, and they can quickly change it. Allow them to adapt and fix the problems as they come up. Give them the tools to do that. So I know that was kind of like a spaghetti of, different advice, but when the client, and this happens a lot, I want to be clear, like this has happened. What do you think, Mike? This has probably happened to us 15 times. People call us and like their stuff is in a freaking mess, like a mess. Like it'll be like, I don't know how to log in. It's like, log into what? They're like, actually, I don't know. It's like, what? I'm like, log into your email. Well, I've been logged into my email for 10 years on my laptop. Okay, well, how do you log in? Because we need to get the recovery code for your Google account. What's a Google account? Your Gmail? Well, I don't use Gmail. I use my internet. I use my laptop email. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like the amount of spaghetti noodles that you will find when you start digging into stuff like this is amazing. But if you can fix it up and you get good at it, people will be loving you. Get them on that password manager and get them freaking organized.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like this happens more often than not, especially when you're dealing with local businesses that have been around for a while, because that's just like, they just don't have time. They don't have time to manage this. And unless they had a good IT setup at some point, this is all a disaster. And even if they had a decent IT setup at some point, most likely they've neglected it over the years, and it's been 5 years since they've ever logged into anything, and it becomes a disaster. I've had to do this. I had to set up people on password managers. I usually use like an open source KeyPass instance right locally on their machine so that nothing is stored in the cloud. I don't have access to anything and stuff like that. So like plenty of situations require probably the most important skill in all of this, adaptability.
Yep.
Having processes is great and it's important, but only sticking to those processes is going to make it very difficult for you to get clients, because every client has a different problem. There's similarities, but you have to be able to adapt, period. So like that's the best way to get clients and keep clients happy.
It's an important thing to say. Like it's an important note, because like as a solutions architect, you are going to have to be adaptable. Like you might go in and be like, I'm just going to fix their bad site performance. And then you find out it's because it's connected to some really complex software that they use. And that's actually the issue. So now you're looking at a technical issue, but you also still need to keep in mind all those UX things, like the character counts and making sure proper fields are there and the proper fields are required, and making sure that the amount of errors that they make are mitigated by the actual CMS itself. And honestly, I mean, just to kind of like share a story and not get into it again, but I mean, we work for a client right now who their website was super, super old, unbelievably old. I was like, not fixing this. It was asked to be fixed because they're not technical. I said, this is not fixable. We need to rip this out. Ripped it out. And I told them, I said, I'm going to make this thing really easy. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, what I'm going to do is, you're used to going in here and like, they had kind of like hacked a bunch of the site together because it was very old. So it was like, you go in and put in a financial report in the CMS, but what that actually does is show a poster on the home screen, because they've like hijacked the financial report like carousel. And so they're just showing like posters for events. Like it was crazy, like stuff like that. And I said, what you're going to do is you're going to log in. And if you want to add an event, you're going to see an event button. You're going to click on that. It's going to show you the events that are in your event page. It's going to show you the dates. It's going to show you the titles. You're going to click on new event. You're going to type all this stuff in, and some of the stuff's going to be required. Some of it's going to be optional. It's not going to let you make a mistake. And then you're going to press publish, and it's going to show up on your website. And if you want it to show up in a week, you press schedule, and it's going to show up in a week once you schedule it. And they were resistant at first. They're like, oh, this is kind of like a big piece of software. It was WordPress, but it was extremely modified. And I was like, no, like this, I promise you, this is the way to do it. And now they're publishing changes. I don't know if I recommend this, but they're publishing changes without even checking them because they're so confident that it just works. Now, I still recommend you check, but still, like the very fact that like I had gone through my due diligence, my testing, and I knew that these people were not technical, how much easier is it for them to get? In this case, they have official government documents. They open it up and they have to put these sort of certain key pieces of information on their website. Simple enough. Go in there, I have a documents page or something like that. They click documents, they click key points, they type in key point 1, key point 2, key point 3. And if they miss key point 2, it friggin' tells them, hey, there needs to be 3 key points for government documents. Type that in, upload the PDF, publish, boom. Miss the PDF? This thing ain't publishing unless you upload that PDF. And it better be a freaking PDF. And it took about a month, and now they're running it, and that's it. And they use it all the time. Like, go in there, I check it every now and again, and they're asking for updates. Like, they're like, oh man, it'd be great to have this page be like this. It's like, yeah. Like, going in and like sorting out a mess is going to get you like a good reputation. And it like, it felt good for me because it cleans up a bunch of stuff. But like, again, it's a bit of a transition for them. But now it's like, man, what? Holy crap. Like, if they need to move to another CMS other than WordPress, it's going to take some doing, of course. But the actual like database entries are so clear. It's like, this is the title, this is the SEO title, and here's the PDF that you uploaded. It's like, oh, clearly this is what we wanted. So just to share a small story, but this happens. Like, this is something that we do, and it feels good to clean up messes like this.
Heck yeah.
But I think that's it. Unless you have anything else to add, Mike, I think that basically solves these 3 scenarios. And if you, the listener, want to let us know how you would solve it, please let us know on any of the socials. Do you have anything else to add, Mike?
I don't think so. I think we covered it. I think these are 3 good scenarios and should help anyone that's looking into getting into client work make those first steps and not make the same mistakes we did.
Yeah. The things we're talking about has been from like 10 plus years ish of running an agency. So like, like I said, our process is still evolving. We are now more entrepreneurial than ever before. Less employee, more entrepreneurs. So, there's always going to be weaknesses that need to be fixed, figured out, and new processes made. So always keep that in mind as well. But that's it. If you want to support episodes like this, you can do so at Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML all the things. Many thanks to our $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hack on thewebhacker.com. Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com. Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com. Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server. And Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media. On Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.